while we're very excited about AI and its potential, when we launched our first fund back in 2020, it was all about workflows. The concept was there was a lot of workflows missing in this vertical that you see in almost every other vertical that just hadn't hit legal yet. And the ironic part is like, we're still there. So I know there's a lot of amazing new applications coming out on the AI side that will change everything, but there's still basic workflow that's missing in this vertical. I think you kind of have a storm coming in like multiple different directions in a positive way for technology and an extraordinary opportunity.
Today on LawNext, when Zach Posner was last on this podcast, it was 2021, and he was less than a year into having co-founded the LegalTech Fund, the first venture capital firm to be laser-focused on law and legal technology. Since then, his firm, of which he is managing director, has gone on to build up a portfolio of more than 60 legal tech companies in which it invests. He's also launched his own conference, the TLTF Summit, which will convene for the third straight year starting December 4th in Key Biscayne, Florida. After attending the first summit, I wrote in my review, quote, "It was a superlative conference, one like no other in legal tech." I've been wanting to get Zach back on this podcast for an update, and as it happens, he was in attendance at the recent Clio Cloud conference in Austin, Texas, where I was set up with my mics and recording equipment. So Zach and I sat down for this impromptu conversation about his firm, his conference, and his thoughts on the legal tech landscape. I am Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to LawNext, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before we get to that, please take a moment to learn about the sponsors whose generosity helps keep this podcast going. Whether you specialize in workers' compensation, employment and labor, or insurance defense, Meriscase was built to cater to your law firm's specific needs. With a comprehensive suite of features, including document management, time tracking, billing, and online payment reconciliation, Meriscase can automate your practice and streamline your workflows. See how Meriscase can help scale up your firm by visiting them today at meriscase.com. That's MERUSCASE.com. Now let's get to that interview with Zach Posner. Zach, welcome back to LawNext.
Thank you for having me, and good to see you, Bob.
We are here live at the Clio Cloud conference in Austin, Texas, and sitting out here on the exhibit hall floor. So if it gets a little bit noisy, well, it will be a little bit noisy. So that goes with the territory, I guess. Anyway, good to see you. How are you?
I am well. I'm excited to be here. This has been coming the last couple years. It's a pretty awesome scene right behind us. You have tons of exhibitors, tons of fascinating early stage companies in legal.
Yeah.
So always excited to kind of walk booth to booth and say hello to everybody.
Yeah, good. So tell people who you are and what you do.
So, name's Zach Posner. I'm a co-founder and managing partner at the LegalTech Fund. We are an early stage investor, specifically in companies that are transforming the world of law. We have a portfolio that is now 60 strong. So I don't know any other investor as thinking about this space the way that we are across the globe.
All legal tech.
All legal tech. We have companies in the US and across the world. So that's kind of one hat. And then as we started to build up and interact with all these entrepreneurs, we started to interact with the community in a major way, and we started a event ourselves.
Called the LegalTech
the TLTF,
Fund, the TLTF Summit.
You got it. And it's
which I happen to know because I've been to all two of them so far, with number 3 on the horizon.
Coming up soon.
Yeah, so we are here. It's early October right now, and the TLTF Summit is coming up in December. I want to talk about that, but before we get to that, let's talk last about that maybe a little bit, because I want to talk about some other stuff too. First of all, I guess I just want to get your thoughts on, I don't know, where we are in the whole legal tech landscape right now. I mean, all everybody's talking about is AI right now, and I don't think that represents necessarily the entirety of everything that's being developed in terms of products, or that lawyers necessarily need developed in terms of products. But what are you seeing? What's exciting to you right now? What's maybe overhyped right now?
So I want to caveat, we're an early stage investor,
Yeah.
so that means I'm an optimist.
Yeah.
I think we're in the early innings here. I think we haven't seen anything compared to what we're going to see. And I think that while we're very excited about AI and its potential, when we launched our first fund back in 2020, it was all about workflows. And the concept was there was a lot of workflows missing in this vertical that you see in almost every other vertical that just hadn't hit legal yet. And the ironic part is we're still there. So I know there's a lot of amazing new applications coming out on the AI side that will change everything, but there's still basic workflow that's missing in this vertical. So I think you kind of have, kind of almost like a storm coming in multiple different directions in a positive way for technology and an extraordinary opportunity.
Yeah. Can you give me an example at all of what kind of workflows you'd be talking about? Or?
Yeah, I mean, you can, I can literally look behind us. I'm guessing we're looking at 150 different booths.
Yep.
The first one right there is one of our portfolio companies, Proof. What Proof is it's Uber for process serving. So process serving is a multi-billion-dollar space. It is all mom and pop shops across the country. And there is no technology. And Eric and his team basically came out a couple years ago and said, we're going to fix this workflow and create a better experience for everybody around the process. And that's what he did, and customers are reacting in kind of an amazing way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just literally the first one that I see.
Yeah.
Or right next to it's another portfolio company, coincidentally, called LawNext. And they're doing the same thing, helping small law firms with all of their marketing and how they manage their clients.
Yeah. And neither of those are really AI company. I mean, there's AI applications that can work within what they do, but their primary focus really isn't AI, right?
Yeah, so look, the AI stuff's very interesting, where I look at it and say, well, first off, I think you have multiple worlds happening at the same time. I think first and foremost, when people hear AI, you think of these AI-first companies, and if you look at some of those AI-first companies, I would say they're basically 90% in experimental mode right now and 10% in meaningful day-to-day usage. Mm-hmm. Versus you have some of these workflow companies that are 90% in day-to-day usage, and maybe they're adding a 10% layer using AI to create a little bit better of an experience for their end user.
Yeah.
But I think there's a big differentiation, and I think when you talk about where the market is, we're almost thinking of this as a 2x2, where you have big firms, you have small firms, and you have firms that bill by the hour, and you have contingency firms. And each one of them is a very different profile, and it has a very different technology adoption curve. And it's fascinating to see, different companies playing in different quadrants there.
Yeah. From where you sit, how do you kind of create those different how do you understand those different profiles? I mean, do you go out and talk to end users? Are you talking to lawyers and legal professionals and hearing from them what it is they're looking for?
Yeah, so look, we're a small team, and I'd venture to say we're on 50 calls a day. So I think collectively we're talking to anywhere from 80 to 100 companies on a monthly basis. New companies on a monthly basis. We're seeing that type of volume of new entrants into this vertical. And then we're talking to our portfolio companies, but a lot of that time is spent talking to the biz dev partners, people like Clio, and what are the types of things they're looking for. But it's also talking to those end users.
Yeah.
So I would say on any given day, we're on 3 to 5 calls with end users, whether it's a law firm, whether it's a general counsel, whether it's a legal operations professional. So this is what we live and breathe, and we're kind of we're trying to be a trusted resource in the middle of this entire community and connect the dots for everybody.
Right. So in connecting those dots, how do you connect those dots? I mean, with all those calls that you're on, if you're on 50 calls a day, what are you listening for? What are you looking for? What are you wanting to hear?
What we have found is that we interact with a lot of companies, and we see 30 companies trying to approach the exact same problem. And then you see a company that's doing something completely different. And at the same time, that's what people are looking for.
Right.
So when people talk about paralegals are struggling with medical records or process serving or things along those lines, or that there's laws being passed. There's something called the Corporate Transparency Act that says you have to disclose now beneficial ownership of companies. There's I don't even know how many millions of companies in this country, and every single company is going to have to comply with this in the next year.
Yeah.
So when we get calls from law firms saying, "What do we do? Who are the tools? Who are the different partners we should be talking to?" Yeah. I mean that's kind of it helps us source our deals, identify our deals, be good stewards to our companies.
Yeah.
But I
love it. I love it when I get a call from a company who wants me to write about it, but I start talking to them and I really like proof, like you just said, that nobody does it. They've got an idea that nobody has done before, and often those ideas are like so obvious that you think, how is it that nobody thought of this before?
But the interesting part for us is proof is obvious now to every venture fund and every growth fund in the country.
Yeah.
But 4 years ago they weren't.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
well, it's obvious in hindsight. It's like how was it nobody saw that before?
And that's where that's why we invest so much time in working with every stakeholder in this community, because it helps us learn and it helps things become obvious at a way earlier stage than anybody else would see it, and that's what kind of gets us excited.
Yeah. Just before I sat down to talk to you, as you saw as you were standing there waiting, I was talking to some of the the COO and CFO of Clio, and Mark Britton, who's an investor in Clio, and one of the things they were all talking about is just the much greater interest on the part of the investment community in the legal tech vertical these days. And even just since you started the Legal Tech Fund, that's been a phenomenon. I think there probably wasn't as strong. What did you say? 4 years ago you started, or 5 years?
We started. Directionally started organizing, I think, 5 years ago.
5 years ago, yeah,
okay.
Years ago, yeah. So, I mean, first of all, do you agree with that? I imagine you do, just because it seems like an obvious fact. But how does that? What does that mean for the legal industry? Is that a good thing?
That is a tricky question. So look, we're in a wave right now, and the wave's going to flush itself out. I mean, basically, when AI came out, and I remember Bill Gates has a great quote: people overestimate what's going to happen in the next 2 years, and they underestimate what's going to happen in the next 10.
Yeah.
So if you remember, we're sitting here now in October of 24. The demo that we all saw of ChatGPT was November of 22.
Yeah.
So we're right about that 2 year. And I don't know if you recall, but right afterwards, Goldman came out with a report, and they ranked all the verticals, and legal was basically number one, saying 44% of all legal work was susceptible to AI. And if you think about what large language models do, it looks in, they analyze large bodies of information. They then, they read large bodies of information, they analyze large bodies of information, and then they put some output that may come in the form of text. But that sounds like a lot of what an attorney does historically. So the whole world is kind of jumping in. We have never seen as much interest. We're getting calls from generalist funds almost daily at this stage, saying, hey, we're looking at this. What do you think of this? Will you help us look at this, et cetera? And, the interesting part is most of the time we're like, hey, we are aware of this company, but did you see these 6 other companies doing the exact same thing? And the answer is usually no. And I think that what's happening is all of this capital is coming in, and it's effectively driving the prices up of these companies. And, I've been an entrepreneur a couple times, and as a first-time entrepreneur, you get excited by that. But, as you grow, you realize, hey, we have to get out of these valuations. So we see generalists coming to us with deals that we think, and for them, this is 1/20 of their portfolio, and they can take a risk on it, and they can pattern match it to other verticals. Yeah. But we get a little bit nervous when that type of behavior is displayed, because anytime we've seen an extraordinary amount of capital go into a company in this vertical, it hasn't ended great yet.
Yeah. So do you end up actually working with those generalists? I mean, do you become advisors to them in some way, or partners with them on these?
Yeah. So I mean, their offer is usually, hey, will you team up with us? We're a smaller fund, so some of these larger funds, they have to elbow everybody out of their way.
Yeah.
But for a small fund like us, I think that hopefully we're viewed as a better partner than we are anything else.
Yeah.
So we work with some, and we actually work with a lot of them in our companies. And the question is just, how we enter that company. And usually we're a little bit earlier than them.
Yeah.
But we see all of these folks as great partners as these companies grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Clio is a company that classically focused on the solo and small end of the market and then talking a lot more about expanding up into the mid-market. Where are you focused? Where do you see the most opportunity in terms of what you're looking for?
So again, if you got to think about what is the product and who is ready to move quickly. I'm not going to keep promoting portfolio companies, but Spellbook is right across from us effectively. And what they basically came out and said, we want to work with small law firms, and we are going to have an LLM-powered solution that's going to be amazing AI technology, and we're only focusing on the small firms. They grew directionally about 10x last year, and they're on that type of trajectory again. Yeah. They're doing this it's on their website. I think it's a $100 a month license fee.
Yeah.
And just growing at a spectacular rate. Now, smaller firms have much less processes and bureaucracy to make that sale. So they can give a demo, or somebody for Spellbook, it's a self-service environment, and they're just going on and signing up and trying the software.
Yeah.
That's a very different sales cycle than if you want to go into the AM Law, 10 or 20, and that may be a year to a 2-year sales cycle.
Right. So in terms of your portfolio, do you have a preference, or are you across the board?
It's a blend. What we're really looking for are the products that people really care about. And that is a different definition depending on the stage of the company.
Yeah.
So the biggest metric that we focus on is engagement. Like, it's one thing if people buy your software, and it's another thing if they buy your software and they're in it for, we have a company that helps with medical records in North Carolina called Pattern Data. And the average engagement, I think their average user is in their software for more than 4 hours a day.
Wow.
Think about the software in your life that you're investing that type of time into. So the metric for us is just like, it can be a big firm product, a small firm product, a contingency-based product, something for the folks that bill by the hour, a corporate product. But the number one, if you wanted to cut through it, the common denominator is we want things that people meaningfully care about.
Yeah.
And that they'd miss. It would almost be like a part of their lives would go missing if that software got turned off.
Yeah. We have much more to talk about in my conversation with venture capitalist Zach Posner, founder and managing director of the LegalTech Fund, including what gets him excited as an investor in legal tech these days, and his thoughts on consolidation in the legal tech market, as well as a sneak peek at the TLTF Summit that will convene in Miami in just a month. Before we get to any of that, please take this opportunity to learn about the sponsors whose generosity supports LawNext. You've worked hard to build your law firm. Don't settle for generic law practice management software. Meriscase is the legal practice management software that is tailor-made for firms that specialize in workers' compensation, employment and labor, and insurance defense. With intuitive features like document management, time tracking, billing, and online payment reconciliation, Meriscase provides robust solutions to support your firm's success. Visit meriscase.com to learn more. Welcome back to LawNext. By the way, that ad you just heard, it could be yours. If you'd like to learn how you can become a sponsor of this podcast, we'll be glad to send you a full media kit with all the details. To get yours, email Ben Ambrogi. That's Ben at lawnextmedia.com. On my Law Sites blog, I recently wrote a 4-part series examining consolidation in the law practice management market, showing that the majority of law practice management products and platforms are now all owned by one of just 6 ownership groups. That led me to wonder what my guest, Zach Posner, as an investor, thinks of all that consolidation. As we return to the interview, that's where we pick up. Something that has been of interest to me lately, and I actually wrote about it recently, is kind of the consolidation that's happened within the law practice management industry in the market, rather in the small firm area. You kind of trace it back to Clio starting as the first cloud practice management platform for solo small firm lawyers, 2008, I think that was. More and more similar kinds of companies started to spring up along the way. There's My Case and Fast Panther, Practice Panther,
Yep.
and any number of other ones. And then over the last, starting maybe 10 years ago or so, right up to now, there's been this increasing consolidation where one ownership group, the ownership groups have different characteristics to them, but one ownership group will gobble up several practice management companies, maybe a payments company or some related, immigration software or that kind of thing. So you get all these brands. So basically, it's coming down to the point where most of the major kind of practice management brands focusing on this market are all consolidated under 6 ownership groups. And I'm wondering if that's a trend that is good for the legal industry, is good for the consumers in the legal industry, or if that's the kind of thing that could lead to, I don't know, some kind of a crash or something that's...
Well, first off, we like and admire a lot of these companies at a high level, and what you're describing is almost like the typical private equity roll-up opportunity, which is a little bit later stage than us. But the characteristics of all these companies are, to that litmus test that I gave you earlier, there's such sticky software programs that you can almost like predict you can almost predict the revenues for these companies for multiple years out.
Yeah.
And that gives the larger funds the ability to say, okay, we can write a big price for this, and if we put these things together, we can offer them more products, payments products, as you mentioned, et cetera. Yeah. And I think that's been the playbook. And a lot of these systems, when that happens, it's built on legacy systems. They don't get to do the technology integration properly because all these systems are discombobulated because there's so many things you're putting together. And then what happens is that actually gives room for the next early stage company to jump in and say, we're going to create a better product offering.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is just a big cycle, like as the categories get defining. So I think for the end customers or consumers of this software, I think there's a healthy ecosystem where you're going to see, Clio right now is your big behemoth, and it's kind of their job to continue to innovate, which it seemed like Jack demonstrated some pretty awesome things in his keynote this morning, but it's their job to continue to innovate.
Yep.
Where if they don't, somebody else is going to take advantage of the next generation of technology and say, hey, we're going to give this a shot and be the next version of Jack one day, potentially.
Yeah. So just as you, we can turn to the conference in just a second, but just, I guess, as I've been asking you questions, I'm wondering, just as you kind of look around the industry these days as an investor, what's got you most excited?
I think all the AI stuff that we're talking about is going to get us excited in the next year or two. I think that what you have is the technology is just changing so rapidly that it is so much more advantageous for you to start a company today opposed to a year ago. And I think that the tech is just getting better and better, so we're going to get excited. But look, the whole world is focused on that stuff right now, and we're seeing a massive gap for all of these companies in and around process improvement, in and around the workflow. And we think that it's going to be the companies that can get that stuff right, get people's habits, get people's attention, and they'll slowly start to build AI on top of it. And I think you'll have some special companies being created.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you a little bit about the summit. And I just wanted to pull up the webpage so I could make sure I had the dates right. December 4th through 6th, 2024.
Yep.
Not so bad a place as Key Biscayne, Florida. This is the third year you'll be doing this. Why did you want to do this in the first place? And how has it evolved from there to here?
So actually, one thing, I mean, we're just sitting here, Cleo, I don't know if you realize, but this is one of the coolest conferences for early stage companies because all of the booths are the same size.
Yeah.
But that is, it's not like when you go to Legal Week or some of these massive shows where the more money you have, the more you can spend.
Yeah.
So for us, we actually love this because we get to interact with startups here and in a meaningful way. But back to our event. So what we found is that community that I talked to you about, your early stage entrepreneurs, your forward-thinking customers, whether they're law firms, general counsels, your investors, there was nothing that brought everybody together. And the biggest gap, what we wanted to do is figure out a way to celebrate the entrepreneurs. So you can go to ILTA, you can go, and that puts the law firms on the stage. You can go to Clock, and that puts the legal operations people on the stage. And there's nothing that helps the CEOs achieve their goals. So all of these conferences and all of these marketplaces are designed to generate more sales. But having been a CEO a couple times, I know that the CEO kind of has like a couple goals. One, they want to raise their next round of capital. Two, they want to find the biz dev partnerships that can be meaningful for them. And three, one day they may want to get acquired. And there was no event that put the CEOs in the center of the stage. So that's what this, as you may recall, it's like we focus this on the startup showcase where entrepreneurs get 5 minutes to tell their story in front of everybody. But what happens is when you get that group right, then it's like the forward-thinking customers, they want to be in the room to see what's coming next.
Yeah.
And the chairs of the law firms want to see what could potentially disrupt their business. And then you get the investors that are trying to cover this big space and there's no central meeting place, and this has turned into that. So that's kind of, that sense of just like exposing our community to everybody, we thought could be very helpful for entrepreneurs, and I think it's been extraordinarily helpful.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, because I wrote about it, I was incredibly impressed after the first year, and no less impressed after the second year. And part of what was for me so fascinating was the involvement of the investment community in the conference. I mean, I go to conferences where there are startups and where there are CEOs, but and I know there are investment people who are kind of wandering around in the background at a lot of conferences you go to, but they're not very visible or public about that. So at your conference, they're up on stage talking about their thoughts on the market and the economy and the industry, and it's just really fascinating to get that perspective.
Yeah, and the fascinating part is like anybody at the event can be up on the stage.
Yeah.
Like it's that type of event, and we really curate for that every single person that you sit down next to at a meal, whatever it is, should be somebody fascinating that you should want to interview on your show.
Yep.
And we said, hey, if we jam everybody together, and it's a different conference. Like the first thing I've said both years, and I'll say it again this year, is skip a panel or skip every panel. And we run like a full-time coffee shop outside. We do small networking activities like, hey, let's build some bikes for kids. And a lot of these things are really just head fakes to get people to get to know each other.
Yeah.
And we think that like if you get the right people in the room, people can help others achieve their goals.
Yeah. So I know that the first year you did it was a little bit of an experiment, I would say. I mean, you hadn't done a conference like that, and you hadn't brought together these people like that, and it seemed to prove successful. But how has it evolved since that first year? Have you just stuck with the format, or are you making changes?
Promoting the startups first and foremost. So, we have a startup showcase. Some later stage companies present as well. Nothing has changed there. I think the only thing that we're doing now is, and we're intentionally keeping it small, so it will not grow much beyond what it was last year. We have not updated the website. We're fully at capacity. The website will be taken down tomorrow, effectively, which is awesome to be 3 months out. We sold out. The hotel was filled up. This year we're taking a whole hotel, and it filled up in July.
Yeah.
No, the only thing that we're doing is a little bit more on the thematic side and having tracks that you can stick to if you choose to.
Yeah.
So, if you're thinking more about software in and around law firms, if you're thinking more of it around corporates, if you're thinking more about the finance side, whether it's the investment community or even the litigation finance community and how tech is going to impact those things. So, but other than that, it's going to look and feel the same, and the whole thing's going to be centered around jamming people together to hopefully drive interactions.
Yeah. So somebody who's listening to this right now saying, Damn, that sounds great. Too late? They can't go?
Unfortunately, it is.
Okay, so watch for 2025.
I would say we're gonna put there'll be a wait list up tomorrow, and then there'll also be let us know about next year.
Yeah.
But it's I think that unfortunately there was a lot of applications we couldn't get to this year, in hundreds if not thousands, and but I think that's intentional. We have to keep this small.
Yeah.
Because we want you to be able to talk to every single person there if you choose to.
Yeah. Can you any previews of the startup showcase of anything particularly interesting?
Well, that's the if you go to our website, there's nothing on it except for that. There's something called a lookbook where we're putting out. We announced the companies probably last week or maybe just a couple of days ago.
Oh, okay.
And we actually have it says download the lookbook. I would encourage everybody to do that, and you'll get a sense for the types of programming. Eventually, this PDF is going to end up being potentially a couple hundred pages. We're going to put a lot of industry slides in there. We're going to talk about the startups, talk about the other presenting companies, talk about the panels and things like that, because we want to make this a resource available to the entire community.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you're thinking about these days?
A lot. I mean, we were going through a backlog today. I mean, there's, I think we're sitting at north of like 2,000 companies that we're trying to get. I mean, there's just a lot of activity in the vertical. And, it's amazing to see like the generals come in. It's also amazing to see the general technologists come in, founders, people leaving Google to launch LegalTech companies, which is something we really haven't seen in the past. Yeah.
Well, Zach, I appreciate your sitting down with me here at the conference and chatting a little bit.
I thank you for having me. It's amazing to see you.
Look forward to see you in 2 months.
Now you're scaring me.
I know. It's awfully close, but...
Yes, it'll be here before we blink our eyes, I'm sure.
Great. Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bob. Good to see you.
Thanks to Zach Posner, co-founder and managing director of the LegalTech Fund, for sitting down with me during the Clio Cloud Conference to share his thoughts and insights on the legal market. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it interesting and useful. If you'd like to share your own thoughts or comments, please do so by messaging me on LinkedIn or X, or by emailing me directly, ambrogi@gmail.com. And if you're a fan of LawNext, please leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. LawNext is produced by LawNext Media. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi. I hope you'll join us again next time for another episode of LawNext.